Well, I'm delighted to be back with Chris Robertshaw. We're doing an item while I was away. I was watching it. The room was full. This is the Local Economy Forum.
Yep.
You're now the chairman of that. You take on another title.
Well, I'm playing my part with quite a large group of others, because this issue we're talking to today, the minimum wage, is a very, very important issue.
Yeah.
It has repercussions right through the economy. And the point of the Local Economy Forum's dynamic is to really engage now with Treasury and Department for Enterprise and have them understand where right now things are going wrong and need to be sorted. But the point of this particular podcast is to identify a few elements of that presentation, which went on last Monday, I think it was, at the Palace. It went on for about... I think about 2 hours.
Were you surprised by how many people were there?
No, because the private sector understands very clearly what's going on here, and we need to review what the political process wants and how they can achieve what what they set out to do, at the same time as not damaging the economy, because that's what's going on, or that's what will go on if this comes in unamended on the 1st of April. So I've picked out 4 of the presentation sections, and if I might, I'd like to talk through them with you. And if you could...
We'll put it on the screen. So time for shared responsibility and our economy so far.
Yeah, this first section, headed Our Economy, is too government-centric. I'll just run through them, so I'll assume as I'm talking this is up on the screen. So government payroll between 2021 and 2025-26 has gone up 35%. Inflation adjusted, it's gone up 12%.
These government figures, by the way?
Oh, these are taken from government figures, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Personal tax allowance, which applies to everybody, has only gone up 3.5% over the period we're talking about. So in real terms, when adjusted by inflation, the value of the tax allowance, the 14,750, has actually gone down as good as 20%, which is very significant, and that impacts everything else that we'll be talking about. The 10% tax band hasn't been adjusted at all over the period, so adjusted by inflation, in value terms, this particularly impacts the low paid, the value of that has dropped 23%. We're hearing that the economy is growing and we should be comfortable with it, but the gross domestic product has reduced between 21 and 23. Now, why that date there? That's because government statistics are behind, significantly behind. So it was only possible to take the government figures between 21 and 23. And the gross domestic product dropped 4.4%. The domestic sector GDP dropped 6.8%, and the domestic sector profits dropped 17.1%. So what you can see there is a pendulum swinging towards government pay, whilst the economy either holds static or contracts, and the private sector's margins are reducing, profit margins are reducing. So here we are now arriving at a declaration by Tynwald that the minimum rate of pay should go up by 10%, and it's the wrong time, the wrong amount, in the wrong way. So if we can go to the next section, that's the 3 arrows. What I draw your viewers' attention to here is what we're looking at here is income tax NI and government payroll between 2021 and 2025-26, okay? So income tax has actually gone up from 216 million there on the left-hand side. It's gone up in the period of this administration so far to 330 million. Now, one of the things that's been said is, oh, look how income tax has gone up, Paul. Therefore, the economy must be doing well as a response. If you look at the breakdown, this is an outline breakdown. there are minor issues to adjust it by. But in broad terms, holding back the allowances and increasing the minimum wage has resulted in an increased taxation of £108 million. And actual growth in the workforce is 6 million. So that then shows you how the increase in tax has gone to 114 million. If you then go to NI and repeat that process, I won't do all the dates again, you'll see holding back the allowances has collected an additional 52 million, and growth in the workforce has grown by 6 million. Then you arrive at that increase of 58 million. But then you look at government payroll, the big red line at the bottom, and you'll notice there that in the period we're looking at, the government payroll has gone up from 421 million to 570 million, which is an increase of 149 million pounds, which effectively is pretty well all the income tax and NI increase has been collected. And then if I ask the viewer to look at the small note under the big red line, it says median wages are 28% higher than the private sector. So government payroll shows 28% higher than the private sector. The UK difference is only 7%. So if you then refer back to what Tynwald agreed, talking about this 60 or 66% median wages, what they're actually doing, they're hiking the minimum wage linked to the fact that the government payroll is bloated. So that shows you where the funds are going. At the third sheet, we want to show here that this is all about, not about creating difficulties for the lower paid. The local economy forum is anxious to have a win-win-win situation, and the point here is that we want to see the take-home pay going up. We want to see the pressure on the private sector businesses reduced, and we want to also provide an opportunity for government to say, look, we want to get to a living wage marker, and what we proposed a week last Monday in the past did exactly that. So if I can take you through the three columns on the third sheet. The first column under the word now, if you can see it, shows the current minimum rate of pay at £12.25. And then you get various deductions from income tax and NI, and you would end up with a pay of £21,017. This, incidentally, is calculated on the concept that we're looking at somebody who works 37.5 hours a week. Okay. Now the actual gross pay minimum rate of pay that Tynwald is opting for is actually, it's not the middle column. It's not on that sheet that we're looking at. It's 1346. But what we've done here is aimed our target at a parity with the equivalent of the living wage, which will be 13.74, which is actually 30 pence more per hour than the proposal Tynwald has opted for. In other words, we're aiming to try to make the position of the lower paid as attractive as we possibly can. Now, if you went under the present arrangements, if you went for the 13.74, that's 30 pence approximately more than what they've gone for, you would end up with a pay after tax insurance of 22,993. What we're suggesting is, okay, let's go for that, but let's make it affordable. And so what we say is adjust the net pay to 1270 from 1225, giving you a gross pay of 24,000 odd. The income tax would drop to 3,151, and then we inserted tax
credits, which is what you keep going back. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. So the take-home pay, the value to the employee, is the equivalent of them being on the living wage, which is an improvement. So we've tried to create a situation which was more beneficial to the employee and fairer to the employer, because the amount of the increase is held in trade. So the whole thing then revolves around, well, what's this tax credit? But the point is that the way our tax and insurance system works on the Isle of Man, when the minimum rate of pay goes up but the allowances do not go up, the burden on the employee at that level is really colossal. If you went back to 2021 and you had somebody the calculation I did was 40 hours. If you put somebody on a minimum rate of pay in 2021, 40-hour week, the actual amount of tax insurance they would pay would be a little bit north of £1,000. Okay, if you then scroll that forward without any adjustments, that person would be paying nearly £4,000 tax and insurance. The way the government has set this out, it means that on the face of it, they're paying those on minimum wages more, but they're drawing so much, they're sucking so much more back into tax and insurance that the biggest benefit of this is actually the government. And the Treasury Minister has said, no, we're not doing this because we want to increase the inflow of tax and insurance. We're doing this for the sake of the employee. We would challenge that. We would say, no, the facts show that what you're doing here is drawing in, sucking ever more money into tax and insurance from the low paid in order to pay for, as we looked at on the earlier sheet, being able to afford accelerating costs of a bloated government, which is completely inappropriate. So what we're saying is introduce this tax credit, and right now we're looking at ways how to do this as simply as possible so that we don't complicate our systems, and we'll no doubt be talking about that in due course. We want to engage with both the Minister of Department for Enterprise and the Minister of Treasury. Alex Allison was at the meeting. He promised at that meeting that he would speak to us. We're waiting for that meeting. Yesterday, it's Tuesday today, isn't it? Yesterday, I rang into Mannyline when Tim Johnson was on to challenge him about this, and he was vague. And he said, oh, well, we're following the vote in Tynwald. But I have to tell your audience, Paul, that he hasn't engaged with the private sector at all. It's twice now recently. He didn't engage with the private sector on this so-called or proposed room tax, which fell flat on its face, and rightly so, because he hadn't engaged with us. And he hasn't engaged with us here. Now, this isn't just now about the minimum rate of pay and those people on it. There are repercussions right the way through a significant number of wage levels, which is now unsettling a whole range of different businesses that, as it were, they've shot their bolts, the government here. They've gone for a principle that seems right, but when you look at what lies beneath, it's a really difficult problem. And what we're trying to do, if you look at the last column in this particular section here, you're showing that we're trying to split the cost of increased take-home pay between the business at £990 and the government at £986.
Sure. I mean, we've been talking about the bands have not moved for many a year properly, have they? Yeah. They've lost touch. Was it Julia asked a question about how much would it cost if it was all done? And she asked for 3 increments, didn't she? How much? Because this is what the thing is. It's going to cost the government, well, that's tax credit, isn't it? £1,379.
Yes, but that would apply to those on the minimum rate of pay, and it would taper down over the increased accruals over the pay just above the minimum rate of pay.
The basic logic is you get more money in people's pay packets. They can do what they want with it, and they can spend it in the economy, which also helps everything, rather than pulling it all from the employer to pay this extra money.
Yeah, but what I think was that you've raised an important point here, because when you move the allowance ceiling up for everybody, Julie Edge's question provided an answer to what that would cost. What this is designed to do is focus particularly on the lowest paid, because they are the people who've really been damaged the most, and by a country mile, by having a system of low allowances and increased gross pay. So our proposal would cost, on the face of it, would cost about £5 million. But taking your point about cash coming into the economy, I think it would neutralise, because right now, because of the government proposals, businesses are looking at redundancies, reducing hours,
putting up the prices,
staff,
obviously
reducing the numbers of staff. There's a report coming out later this week from the Local Economy Forum, which is a response to a questionnaire it placed out to the Palace, at the Palace Hotel a week last Monday, which shows how immediate and worrying the impact of this is going to be if the government doesn't go ahead. If the government goes ahead.
And just, do you know what the UK rates are at the minute? I mean, how will this fare, roughly? I mean, are they on matching amounts? I don't know.
What we've done here to give a sensible link to the living wage on the Isle of Man and the economy is to say, look, if we carry on with the Tynwald proposal of this 66% median, it means because government is pushing its wages up disproportionately, it will drag down the private sector businesses. What we're seeing here actually is the government machine getting bigger, getting more expensive, and sucking the life out of the private sector.
Isn't that the whole crux? This 28% difference.
Yeah.
And 7% in the UK. How has that happened? Is this again civil service running the country, the civil service putting in their paid claims and almost being rubber stamped through?
Yes, I mean,
so it's out of control again.
Yes, I mean, yesterday I was leading on the future IOM concept of 3 pillars. The central one is the need to adopt unified government, and through that system you can then start developing methods of making ensuring that the government departments are much more productive and efficient.
But now they're so far ahead, they're not going to take pay cuts. I mean,
there's no suggestion that they should.
But they'll want another 5% each year, so it'll just get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, because government essentially isn't efficient and productive, if it became so, it might be able to afford the increases it's applying.
How can Alf Cannon and his government allow this to happen when it seems to be killing the Isle of Man at the same time? I mean, certainly one side of this will be the lower paid need more money.
Yes.
But how they get that money is where you are stepping in.
Yeah, we're
how to fund it.
If you go to the last sheet,
yeah.
You'll see that everybody wins with our proposals. The employees win because they achieve more take-home pay than the government proposal. It protects excessive costing escalations for the private sector, and the government sector can say, well, we've achieved, albeit equality with the living wage in the UK, we've achieved something we set out to do.
Okay.
Now, if they don't listen to us, if they don't engage with us, if there is no response, Paul, we've reached a serious tipping point in our economy.
Yeah.
And it's a deep worry. And that's why so many people turned up at the Palace.
But they have to stand there and say it was Tynwald's will. I mean, everyone voted for this, right? Did they at some point exactly for this numbers, or was it just the will of having an increase in the pay? It was not how you got to it.
It was the simplicity of the top line gross pay. Remember, Treasury hadn't consulted with the private sector and hadn't engaged with us. Department for Enterprise hadn't engaged with us. The members hadn't drilled into the detail of what lay beneath the adjustment and increase. In other words, the disproportionate increase in tax insurance that the person on lower pay would have to embrace. I mean, look here. Just one quick example.
Yeah.
Our employee national insurance is 11%. In England, the employee pays 8%. In Jersey, they pay 6.5%. I'm afraid to say this, that our economy relies, that, or should I say the government budget, relies too much on taxing people on low pay and just above that disproportionately, and it's about time they were treated fairly and properly, and we're trying to do that here. I do hope that they start listening.
And just the cost of living in the Isle of Man is much higher than being in the UK,
Yeah,
presumably
exactly.
as well.
So there's that disadvantage as well. So
it's a double whammy for the.
did I read somewhere? I think it was on Manx Radio this morning. I read that the food bank take up has accelerated significantly.
Yeah.
Now, you bet your bottom dollar there'll be people going to food banks now that are on income above the minimum rate. We've got a problem, Paul, and we need to solve it.
How can they sort this? Because
talk to us.
But they've laid down they're going ahead with this, right? I mean, that's what I read. Surely this is not negotiable. This is going to happen as is planned.
We're saying make the delivery of the take-home pay fixed. Achieve things by adjusting the system, and what we've got to do together is find ways of doing this as simply and as quickly as possible. We don't want to complicate the government systems. We've got to find ways of operating this and delivering it simply.
And this is coming in the budget, is it? The Manx budget next year? Is that when it's due to come in?
Well, Treasury's saying, well, we've given you 5. Well, he said.
So it's February or something, isn't it?
It's April.
April.
Yeah. So the problem is we can't wait till then to solve this, because businesses, as you can imagine, are now making decisions about next year.
Sure.
Whether they reduce the staffing, reduce the hours, close down, don't invest the money that they hope.
Or put up their prices. Don't forget. I mean, there was that option, and some will. I've already said that. That's what they'll be doing. They'll be passing on this increase to their customers, especially food.
If the increase is above and beyond that which the customer can afford, then all that happens there, and it'll be inevitable to some extent, is the amount the turnover the business receives will drop down,
and they could go out of business. Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I can see where you're going, but I'm saying that is a possibility that we're all going to see high prices to pay for this.
We're going to see the economy run into stressful environment if we don't respond to this.
Okay, well, so the door's open. You're hoping to hear from the Treasury Minister. He's going to give you some feedback, is he? Has he promised you something?
He's promised to engage with us, and it's important, having listened to Tim Johnson and how far removed he was from understanding this, it's important we engage with him as well.
Tim Johnson thought all the hotels were busy over the summer, remember?
Well, I don't want to go back there.
No,
but it's
someone's out of touch, or somebody's giving him information that's not up to date.
I think you asked me at the beginning of this little interview, you said, is this the civil servants? Well, it's somebody that's not engaging, and I would point at the departments of government drifting further and further away from the engagement they should be involved in. I don't remember anything like this happening years ago.
And you can only push this so far, can't you? Going for the private sector, civil servants going for the private sector to get all these increases in the Ponzi scheme to pay their pensions.
The tipping point, here it is, let's deal with it.